It used to be, they said, that you could tell the character of someone by the contents of their bookshelf. Now, if you looked at the contents of my bookshelf, I might seem a little boring, because there's a bunch of theology up there, there's a bunch of philosophy up there, there's some psychology, and there might be a couple of books on fitness. Kind of bland. But I think a modern equivalent to what it is, what a bookshelf would be checking out the contents of someone's YouTube channel. If you've been on YouTube, you know that YouTube will suggest certain things to you, certain things you might want to watch. And so then I get to be a little bit more interesting, because there's maybe some stuff about metalworking there, or some more stuff on fitness, and of course there's a little bit of cooking. And all of that cooking, well, the majority of that cooking, is a particular Scottish chef that I'm sure we've all heard of, Gordon Ramsay. Now, if you know Gordon Ramsay, and I think some of you do, because I heard the groan, you might think that he's a little overbearing. You might think that he's a little nasty. And certainly if all you've seen is something like MasterChef or Hell's Kitchen or something like that, yeah, he is kind of nasty. But if you see some of his other stuff, you see him really get excited about cooking. You see the passion that he puts into his cooking. Just watching him make scrambled eggs. He's dancing around the pot. Look it up, seriously. He's dancing around that pot. He's so excited. Seeing him to make rice or something really plain and simple, and he's dancing around. It's inspiring. And it's something that's kind of inspired me in my cooking. But certainly there is that overbearing, there is that very serious part of Gordon Ramsay that's always in my head as I'm trying to follow his recipes. Now, he's someone who spent years learning and perfecting his craft. So he knows the tastes of all the herbs and spices. I'm still trying to learn herbs and spices. One thing I can pick out is salt. And my family was good enough to get me some nice salt from Newfoundland, oddly enough. I don't know why they picked them there. I got some sea salt here that's got a little bit of seaweed in it. It's got a nice little taste to it. But I've always got this pressure when I'm cooking to make things taste really good. And I can be really critical. And Angela is probably nodding, so I'm not going to look that way. But I can be really critical of myself when I don't think the taste is quite up to par. And there's a lot of pressure when you see Gordon cooking. He's got everything, like his kitchen is a designer kitchen. He's got everything right where he needs it. So he needs a spatula, it's right there at hand. He needs a pot, it's right there. Or a pan, or a knife or something, it's right there. All the ingredients are right where they are. For me, though, in our kitchen, I'm like, where's that pot? Oh, it's over here. Oh, wait, where's that pan? Oh, it's under here. Oh, maybe I should spend a little bit more time prepping the food, but sometimes you don't have time to do that, right? So there's always this pressure to kind of flow around. And there's also the pressure to make something look good on a plate. And there I really think I fumble a lot. Last week I made something, there was way too much pasta, not near enough vegetables and pork. And I thought it tasted really good, but it just kind of plopped on the plate. Didn't really look too appetizing. But there's always that pressure to have something that looks good. And I take on so much to try and do this. I take on so much myself to try and make this really decent dinner. And it can sometimes get me a little burnt out just in making dinner. I mean, I like making dinner, and when I do pull it off, it's really, really good. I mean, there was that one time I made beef Wellington. I think that turned out really well, right? But the everyday stuff I sometimes don't quite go right. Now, maybe you're not aspiring to be any type of chef and you're okay with taking food from wherever, and that's fine. You know, some people are going to pre-order their meals. But I think all of us have that one thing where we're trying to do something. We're trying to take on a lot. And maybe we have this pressure not for the right taste, but for something that'll be, thrilling might be too strong a word, but something that really leaves you with an experience. And we really work hard for something, and we never measure up to our own expectations. There's always that one thing that we notice isn't quite there, not quite what we were shooting for. And there's that pressure, maybe not to be able to flow around the kitchen, but to create something that kind of just flows together, that we can make it look effortless. Getting the right equipment in the right place to make it look really good. Or maybe we don't care about how food is plated, but we still want to make something that's attractive. We want to make something that looks at least as good as the people next door. Even if it isn't food, we want our lawn to be as good, or our garden to be as good, or our cars to be as good, or the front of our house to be as good, or maybe just the front door to our apartment to be as good. And we spend so much energy trying to take all of this on. And we get burnt out. Or we try so hard to do this and we fall just short. And so we feel unfulfilled. And this can even happen in our spiritual lives. We see other people, they're absolutely calm and serene in the middle of anything. Nothing gets to them. And we wonder how we can be like that. Or people who are absolutely content with what they've got in life. And how can we be so content? And we wonder, and we want to be happy and fulfilled. We just wonder how to do it. What do we have to do? But the good news that we hear today is that we don't have to do it on our own. We just have to be ourselves. And Jesus will show us how being ourselves, being really ourselves, will help us to get into heaven. Will help us to be citizens of heaven right here, right now. Jesus talks about how we are the salt of the earth. And I think of salt, and, I realize you can have a dish that's got no salt in it, right? Just throw some eggs in a fry pan and eat them, and they're kind of bland, especially the egg whites. But of course you can have food that's way too salty, right? And we've all had that. We need to have just the right amount of salt in our lives. But with Jesus being the salt, Jesus acts to bring the best out in us. Just like salt in the dish, on its own, it is too salty, but with just the right amount, it brings out the right flavors in the dish, and it helps all of the different flavors to come together in the dish. We're not responsible for a nice experience. We just need to be ourselves. We just need to let Jesus bring us together as we are, broken but hopeful believers. Being authentically ourselves. And Jesus is the salt that will bring it all together. We hear that Jesus is the light, and that we are made to be a community, and we are a light on a hill. And this is just talking about, we're not meant to be raised up or glorified or to be the centerpiece. We're meant to shine a light out, to go out into the world and to call out oppression and segregation and inequality and injustice where we see it. And to say that that is not right, that we are all made in the image of God, that we are all part of what it means to be this kingdom community of heaven. Jesus shows us what's really important, and we can focus on that, on building community around that, and learning from what Jesus taught and from how he lived, how to be that community that comes together and that shows the world what it is to live in community. And finally, Jesus talks about being the fulfillment of the law of Moses and the writing of the prophets. So basically everything in the Old Testament, everything it was pointing to, Jesus is the fulfillment of that. And the fulfillment of law, you might think, well, that's kind of weird. And so I wish that they didn't always translate Torah as law of Moses, because it's more like the teachings of Moses, the teachings that God gave to Moses. They're not black and white legalistic terms. And we'll look at this a little bit more next week. But they're meant to be guideposts, just guides towards what it is to be a citizen of the kingdom community of heaven, what it is to live with love. All of those laws are somehow fulfilled in love. Love for God and love for our neighbor. And so we don't need to create something that shines better than anyone else. Through Jesus and living as the fulfillment of the law, we become the salt of the earth. We become the light of the world. We are able to fulfill that calling that Jesus calls us all to. And so we get to season our lives with a little bit of Jesus so that we can be the best that we can be, so that we can live lives that are meaningful, lives that are fulfilling. And there are, of course, several ways that we can do this. There's being charitable, whether that's volunteering your time, whether that's offering money, or whether that's just being nice to your neighbors. Whatever it is, we can all be charitable in our own way. Or maybe serving in the community somehow. Or maybe just encouraging others. And saying, those wonderful music, thank you for sharing. Those are wonderful voices, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming out week after week to be a part of this community and to help lift this community up. If you can think of cooking just a little bit more, you'd never want a dish that was just the meat. Even if it's a perfect steak, you'd never want just the meat. A well-balanced diet is going to have vegetables, it's going to have starch, it's going to probably have some sort of dessert involved in it. You need that balance of everything to really have a well-balanced meal. So you need a balance of expressions of faith to create that well-balanced meal. Worship and fellowship and discipleship and outreach and evangelism. You need a balance of all of that to really have a healthy and a good spiritual life. And one of the things that we can all do to take that next step is just by offering thanks for our food. By saying grace before every meal, something Jacob is really getting used to. And these graces, they can be really short. The shortest grace I've ever heard, and if you bonus points because this is in Latin, Benedictus Benecat. Real short and simple. And if you're worried about people thinking that you're being a little too preachy, you can just say that before grace. You look super smart. You're speaking in Latin. Great thing. Or if you want me a little short, a little bit longer, but still kind of on the short side, one word's as good as 10. Let's give thanks. Amen. Just 10 words. Short, sweet, to the point. Maybe you want something that rhymes a little bit more. For every bowl and plateful, Lord, make us truly grateful. Now, I know this next one's a little bit more seasonal, but in and around the 25th of January, we're a little bit late for it now, but in and around the 25th of January, you can always say, some may meet and can eat, some would eat and want it, but we may meet and we can eat, and say, the Lord be thanked. And now there's a musical one that we sometimes sing around the table. I don't remember it though, but does anyone remember the Johnny Appleseed grace? Yes? The Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and rain and the apple seed. The Lord is good to me. Johnny Appleseed, amen. Our choir, like they can sing on the spot. All of you got them well trained. But even this, it just helps to season our food with a little bit of Jesus, because it gives us a bit, before we eat, and we're going to eat at least 3 times a day, if not more, but gives us something before we eat that we can be thankful and we can remember that we're just part of this web. There are farmers who prepare the food, there are people who put the food together, there are the shippers who moved it from place to place. We're just part of it, and we're thankful that they're all able to attend to those ministries. We're thankful that this food gives us energy so that we can answer God's call. And we remember, especially when we're eating with others, that this is a time to be present, to put those little doodads away, and to be present with one another, and to just spend some time in community. All of these ways are ways that we can season our life with just a little more Jesus. And as we do this more and more, we get to following Jesus, we get to witnessing to Jesus. And I know that sounds like a really scary thing, because it sounds like you're going to be out on the street corner with the placard up, and the end is near. That's not witnessing. I guess that's a form of witnessing, but it's not really the best way. The best way is just to live as an authentic follower of Jesus. Just that, just living. Being that example. That some people, you might be the only example that they see of what it is to really follow Jesus. Or maybe, as they see you doing that, they might ask you questions, like, why do you do that? And then you can share that, hey, I do that because follow Jesus. I chose to follow Jesus. No pressure sales, no trying to convert people, just telling them. And then maybe you invite them to something. We've got a wonderful Valentine's Day lunch coming up soon. We need orders by Wednesday, people, but if you got a few people that you'd like to invite, you can check out, and if they're interested in coming, you can place your order with the office. You can invite them to any of our meals, any of our events that are happening. You might even invite them to Sunday morning. You never know. But these are all ways that we can bear witness to Jesus. Even if we're simply just living as good Christians, as good followers of Jesus, just loving God and loving others. And through all of this, we're just making the world better. We're demonstrating that kingdom community of heaven is near. It is at hand. It is here. We're demonstrating that invitation that we are all welcome. That there is a place at the table for each one of us. And as we season our lives with Jesus, we're able to season the world with Jesus. Let me pray for you. God of abundant grace, we sometimes think we have to do everything on our own. And there's so much pressure that way. We think that we have to be good people. We think that we have to grow your church. We think it's all up to us. We are thankful that Jesus not only came into our lives, but is still coming into our lives. We're thankful that you come into our lives. We're thankful for the Spirit. We're thankful for all of the little ways that our lives are seasoned with Jesus. And we ask God that as we go from here, we might find more ways, little ways, to just invite Jesus into our lives to help bring out the best of who we are, so that we can go and bring out the best in your world. In Jesus' mighty name we